Good evening, councillors, staff members, members of the public, both here in person and those joining us online. This is being streamed live. For those who haven't been part of these meetings before, this is a notice of agenda briefing for us to work through the agenda for next week and elected members to ask any questions of that agenda before we go into decision making next week. There'll be no debating tonight. It's the opportunity to get informed. We do have an apology from Councillor Turner. I think she may actually be on leave, or that might start next week, but she is an apology for tonight regardless. And the Director, Mick Roberts, is also an apology, and Director Strawn is also an apology. I've received one declaration of interest, 10.3.3, from Councillor Todd Brown. He knows the number of external members applying on that role. That is an impartial interest. And I understand I have an impartial interest from Councillor Gassett. Thank you. So good. And that's on 10.4.3. He previously had some expressions, I can't read that exactly, but effectively expressions through someone working for that company. It is an impartial interest as well. So both those members will remain in the room for those two particular items. Are there any other declarations of interest? Councillor Quain? Not quite on that part, but no worries, I'll take that. Sure, it's we can put it in and get it in next week's agenda anyway, so that's for later on. There you go, thank you. Any other declaration of interest? Thank you. So we're going to work our way through the agenda, and I haven't put you on the spot a little bit here, Councillor Kozisek. Obviously there was minutes of the policy committee. A number of those policies are before us tonight, but I did say previously I'd asking chair of those committees to give any updates on things happening. So Councillor Kozisek, is there anything you want to add from the policy committee that's not obviously being dealt with tonight? All good? Yeah, I think every single report's coming through this regard, but obviously that's the opportunity. No problem. So moving through those policies, so all these policies have come through the committee recommendation. Yes, Councillor.
Are we still on 8.1?
That was the minutes. I just asked if
the minutes, beg your pardon.
Yep, so we just sort of skipped over that bit. I did ask if the chair had anything to add, but we'll deal with the minutes next week then. But into the reports themselves then, and dealing with all these policies, there's a number of them here. I'll start with this one. 10.1.1 is the private use of the Mera vehicle. Any questions on this?
Mr. Mayor, I did have one, if I may.
Yes,
if it's possible to ask what the thinking around. I noticed there's no changes, which is fine, but I was just wondering if there's any thinking around this. Yeah, sure. I
attended this meeting as well, and I think a couple of members indicated whether or not this policy is still required. Ultimately, that committee has decided to continue the policy as written. But yeah, there was some conversations about whether or not we need a policy, with the governance basically saying that even though it's not currently being used, to have a policy in place should it come into the future is
Thank
what
you.
we've got.
I was thinking it's along the same lines, hence the question. Thank you
Sure,
very much.
thanks, Councillor Smith. Yeah. Any further questions? Councillor Cassidy? Another one? 10.1.1, no further questions. 10.1.2, any questions on 10.1.2, which is around tenants and events? No changes recommended. Any questions? That's fine, thank you. 10.1.3, which is our asset monitoring. Questions on this? No changes recommended. No problems. 10.1.4, equal opportunity. Questions, Councillor Gassett, this is what you had a question on, yes?
Just two questions. One is about what numbers do we have in terms of employment of people with disabilities?
I'll ask the CEO if he's got an answer for that. I'm not sure if he does straight away. I might have taken notes, but CEO?
Thanks, Mayor. I don't have those numbers to hand. We do obviously, I think, report those in the annual report, but we would be able to take that on notice and provide that later.
Thank you.
Second question, Mr. Mayor, is we've added or the recommendation to add into the legislation combating anti-Semitism, hate and extremism, which I welcome. So I'm just wondering if there is some sort of targeting of elected members by people who have anti-Semitic tendencies. What would the council do?
I would suggest if there's a council member who's being targeted by anti-Semitic threats, then that becomes a policing matter and that should be taken up with the police.
So the council policy doesn't cover it at all?
And no, we don't have a policy that covers if there's other threats against council members in that regard as well, because if it becomes a policing matter, it's a policing matter.
Now, what about duty of care, Mr Mayor, and occupational health and safety?
Again, I would suggest if you're talking about a particular thing, we don't have a policy which covers if an elected member has a death threat against them or has a racist threat about them. So I'm not sure where you would get in that particular thing. But CEO, do you have any comment on that?
Nothing further than what you've already expressed, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will address it next week, though, in more detail.
Sure. Any further questions on 10.1.4? Thank you. 10.1.5. Any questions? Thank you. 10.1.6. Thank you. 10.1.7. Councillor Quine.
I noted the establishment of the grant assessment panel, and there was only an option for 3 places. So what is the process, and if we get more than 3 nominations?
Thanks, Councillor Quine. I think the request is to prepare the report to council considers that, but like most process, we'll go through a voting process. But CEO, and I did have, Councillor Turner did ask a question around 10.3.2 we might be referring to. Councillor Quine might be the better space for that particular thing, because obviously 10.1.7 is kind of then jumps into 10.3.2. So we'll hold that thought for a moment. Thank you. 10.1.7. That is all those policies. Thank you. 10.3.1 is some information from those other groups. Is there any comments or, sorry, questions on those items? All good? Thank you. Here we go, Councillor Quine. So 10.3.2 will be the establishment of that committee. Obviously, at this stage, the terms of reference has 3. As you're aware, in previous decisions, we can control the terms of reference. So clearly, we can either change that next week, or if council wants to keep 3 members, we can vote on that next week. We will note, and I did pass this on, Councillor Turner, although being an apologies night, did indicate that she would like to nominate on that panel, which we'll obviously deal with that next week. She won't be here next week either, but she has indicated she would like to nominate to be on that panel, just out of interest, not holding into anything. Is there other interest to being on that panel? Councillor Ramesh, Councillor Quine? Okay, so at this stage, there's 3 members. Now, if there's no, that's not stopping anyone. Next week, we can deal with that formally, of course, and if there's going to be more interest, then we can either extend it or have a vote. We'll work our way through. Is there any other questions on this item before we deal or continue to keep moving? Thank you. 10.3.3, councillors, is on external members. Now, these members are obviously under a confidential cover. So if there's any particular questions around that, what are on the confidential attachment? Just in general? In general, yeah, Councillor Kozak.
Thank you. Just wondering if next week we can take these appointments one by one rather than as a block, please.
Yeah, should that be fine, I'd imagine, on that. We'll work through that process. We'll have to deal with the item behind closed doors, I'd imagine, in that process, because if we're dealing with individuals, then absolutely, we'll need to. So I'm assuming if you're working through that, you'd be providing that or suggesting amendment that rather than appoint the community representations named, you'll be appointing some of those members
Yeah.
or additional or whatever what
Thank
you're
you.
suggesting. So we can deal with that next week. We'll just have to go behind closed doors for that particular item. Councillor Smith?
I probably had a similar question. We'll probably have to go behind closed doors next week.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure. We can work our way through that. And look, rather than asking all the members of the public to leave now, we do have another item later, which is of confidential nature as well. So I'm happy to refer back to this item at the end of that. Any other generic questions of this particular item? No, thank you. 10.3.4 is the schedule of accounts paid. Is there any questions on that? All okay? Thank you. 10.3.5 is a proposed rate increase and advertising of the differential rate for 26-27 councillors. Is there any questions on this report? Councillor Gassett?
Just hoping to get some more data, Mr. Mayor, so I can help me make a decision.
Mhm.
There's been just a quick talk about comparing our rates with other prospective rates around the state. Can we have a comparison? This is only specifically for 1 year. Can we have a comparison, say, over the last 4 years, rather than just 1 year overall? And the second question is, can we have a comparison of our net compounded interest rate rise over the last 4 years compared to the compounded per CPI?
I think we'll be taking that on notice, obviously, Councillor Gassett. So you're wanting a comparison to all other local governments, or the ones that have been
Ones
that have
that
been
just
mentioned,
been mentioned generally.
Yep.
But
around what their rate increases have been over the last 4 years, and then how that compares, well, and then also separately, how that compares to CPI.
Sorry, the second one is, can we have a comparison between our rate rise over the last 4 years compounded versus CPI over the last 4 years, per CPI over the last 4 years compounded? So it's 30% versus 15%, that sort of thing.
Sure. See, I think the Director of Finance was jotting down some notes there, so I will take the question on notice and provide what responses we can to those questions, Councillor Gassett. Councillor Wayne?
Thank you, Mayor. My question is, if we were to consider a deficit budget of 600,000, what impact and what would that look like?
Be about a 1.5% less, Councillor Quain. But in terms of impact, I mean, this is about setting the rate. So if council wants to lower that rate, then it's up to the CEO. We don't tell him to set a deficit budget. If this wasn't supported, obviously the staff would work on whatever percentage rate we had them. Now that may be a position with a deficit position, or obviously there'll be a reduction in what they need. But CEO, you might want to add some further comments on that.
Thanks, Mayor. Obviously, this is about advertising the rate based on all the information that we have provided through the workshops. If elected members, this is about advertising, and it's not the formal decision that you will make come budget day. But if there is direction from the elected members to only support a lesser percentage, then we would need to do some more work around what that would mean, whether that was a deficit budget or whether that would be cutting, particular projects from the draft budget as it stands right now.
So, Councillor Gwen, probably doing the answer back to your question, I'd suggest that, if you were to debate that next week and with a preference, then you were obviously at the moment this is based on that. So if you could either add a point or amendment to that to suggest that that would be your position or your support, then we can work our way through that next week. Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, just one more, Mr. Mayor. The differential rating, is it possible to just really highlight the potential rate rise for residential versus commercial versus industrial?
Yeah, 6.7%.
Hmm?
Yeah, 6.7% for all of them.
So across the board?
That, yes.
They weren't that last year, is that right?
So last year we moved from what would be a one rate in the dollar to a differential rate in the dollar to make sure that increase was the same, as opposed to having a 40% rate increase for residential.
I guess the point I was getting to is revert back to my first two questions, how it impacted commercial, industrial versus residential over the last 4 years. Because they had a jump last year for...
There's a number of different variations to consider, whether it's an individual commercial property v the one next door, and different things to consider with valuations. So when you start talking about what a rate increase is as opposed to what valuation changes, it can be a significant change in the data. But what you've asked for is that compounding interest for what the average rate increase has been. So in effect, what the revenue from rates increase has been will be something we can supply.
Right, and I'll leave it. I'm just really after the net increase or the actual increase in rates. So
Exactly.
not after GRV, but the actual net increase in overall rates.
Yeah, exactly. So Councillor Gassab, obviously what I'm saying there is the rate revenue is increasing by 6.7%, and if you wanted to look back over that, that's what we can pull out over the last 4 years. Or that is proposed rate increase, I should say. Any other questions, Councillor Brown?
I don't know if this is a thing, but do we have access to a CPI for infrastructure costs?
I understand there was a local government CPI rate, but CEO, do you have any comment on that?
Thank you, Mayor. There is a local government CPI, and obviously there's Perth CPI. There is different indices that are used for the construction industry and other industries. We haven't referenced any of those, but what we have been mindful of is, some of our projects going forward, and particularly with the uncertainty in the Middle East around, some of that and the volatility of that and what that might mean. But we haven't looked at individual indices other than, the normal CPI, which most local governments would use.
Further question, Councillor Brown?
Yes, just in that, over the past number of years, infrastructure has been running higher than CPI. We're in the business of infrastructure and asset management. So that was my question, was do we have anything that does indicate that sort of number so that we keep pace with the actual infrastructure that we've got to maintain?
CEO?
Yeah, well, we certainly can find that. So there is indices, as I said, that are relative to the infrastructure sector. So we certainly can provide that. I think in the past, probably the city's had an allocation for certain like footpaths and probably just done less if the costs have increased. So instead of doing X amount of metres, we've done less. We haven't actually provided more money to meet the rising costs in that sector. We expect, and it's already happening with some of the legislative changes, that the issues around fuel are going to impact, a number of projects going forward, and that's why we're trying to not overcommit, given some of that volatility too. But we can certainly get, I can certainly get some rates for you around construction industry in particular that would be useful.
Further questions on 10.3.5? I just have one for the CEO. So obviously I note in this recommendation there you have that as requesting the CEO prepare the draft budget based on 6.7% increase, and then in the report it talks about the 5.7% as a net operating or part of the plan, and then a 1% to the asset renewal reserve. So the question would be, if there was an appetite to reduce what was going to the asset renewal reserve, would that have a fundamental increase on the bottom line of the budget?
Thank you, Mayor. No, it won't. So if for example, the 1% was reduced to 0.5%, what we're trying to do is we've already done a fair bit of work in terms of our asset management plans and buildings, in particular. The quality of the data that we now have shows an increasing gap, and what we are trying to do with the 1% is to try and address part of that. It won't address all of that. And to link in with Councillor Brown's question, there is a gap that is growing in terms of some of our maintenance requirements. So it won't affect the bottom line. The 5.7% will allow our operating budget to stay as is, but the 1% is about future proofing and ensuring that we start to build some of our reserves for what we know is coming.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Ramesh?
Just a quick clarification. When we do the final rates, will that include the waste charges and waste levy as well? Because we don't know the final figure, so whilst it may look 6.7, what will be the final ballpark figure for a business or a residential?
Yeah, sure. So this is just dealing with obviously in the rate notice, the general rate. The waste, the fees and charges we'll be dealing with at the moment, which is outside our rate notices. You'll note, and I did see the correspondence come out around the emergency services levy. That's something we don't control. That's already part of it, and percentage increase we may know. But the waste charges will be determined as part of another position, and probably determined at budget time, because we don't need to advertise that, from my understanding. So that'll just be part of the budget considerations, as will the other items that we would deal with in budget in terms of instalment opportunities and any other charges that come part of that as well, reserve amounts. Did you see what the increase was, CEO, or what the proposed increase from the emergency service levy was? I think it was a bit higher than normal.
Yeah, my understanding is a bit higher than normal, but we'll get that for you, Mayor, and distribute that.
Further questions? Councillor Gassett? Just a microphone, thanks, Councillor Gassett.
When we get the bills, the council rates, you have to add up everything to work out what the actual overall rate rise and services and charges are, excluding the emergency services. Sometimes it adds up a lot more than our standard rate. So I'm just wondering whether we can have an overall net increase in what people actually have to pay in their bill.
Well, the breakdown gets obviously a general rate and then a waste charge and emergency levy, and it's impossible to determine because people have different waste charges. For example, I have a larger bin, so I pay a separate amount to what you may pay. Other people might have 2 bins or different charge. So the charge is based on usage from the bill, so it's very hard to determine what that may be.
Still do averages, Mr. Mayor.
I'll ask the CEO to take that on notice and see if we can provide something in that regard, Councillor Cassett. Councillor Smith.
Mr. Mayor, just reading through this item, can I ask, I noticed that the staff have found savings to kind of offset this. Was that really difficult to do, and well done that you did?
CEO?
So thank you, Deputy Mayor, for the question. As part of the budget process, we go through a number of iterations from all of the requests that come in, the generation of the budget, knowing the known increases that we do have. We went through a zero-based budget exercise this year and cut 1.2 million from the operating budget, and then there was over $2 million in projects that we've considered, and part of that is about the uncertainty. Part of that is about also understanding that there will be a carryover of some of the projects this year. So we're trying to be quite deliberate. We're not sure what is happening overseas, how that will impact on some of the projects that we've got as well. So we've got budget reviews. We can look at that as we get into next year. But we have done a fair bit of work on getting back to a zero base and going through that torturous line by line examination, and then looking at the projects that we don't need to do, recognising we will carry over some projects into next year.
Other questions? Look forward to the debate next week. Between 10.36 is our proposed fees and charges, so similarly will be advertised and formally endorsed at our budget meeting. Is there any questions on the fees and charges? All okay. And this isn't including waste charges, I will add. This has nothing to do with that. Okay, we'll keep moving. 10.4.1, fifth omnibus amendment. Is there any questions on this item? Councillor Broad?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. My question surrounds the effect on maybe existing properties in the zones that are being presented. Are there any anticipated benefits or concerns preempting for property owners?
CEO?
Thank you, Mayor. We do have Kelvin Story, the Principal Strategic Planning Officer, who's responsible officer for this report, so I'll ask him if he can answer those questions.
Thank you, through the Mayor. The administrative text changes that are in there fairly minor, I'd say, in terms of impact or changes upon landowners or developers, fairly minimal. What it does bring us some clarity and certainty to those, particularly in terms of the split coding where that appears in the scheme. From an operational level, that's what staff have been using for some time, so it doesn't bring any significant changes from business as we've been dealing it for quite some time. So in that respect, the text changes very minor. In terms of the mapping changes, it's very much a catch-up. Many of those are small parcels of land that have maybe been given up by council from reserves, and they consist minor slithers just being added into the property boundaries. So it's a bit of a tidy up there. It's just for, I suppose, in answer to your question, just clarity and certainty.
Thank you. One more.
Councillor Wood?
Thank you. Just one more. The rationale behind reclassifying the specific lots from residential to public purposes, the drainage reserve. I don't know if I've read that right, but can you just explain a little bit about that?
Yep, there's that's in City of Bunbury ownership, and essentially it's areas adjacent to an existing drainage reserve. They're narrow, irregular shaped lots that would never be put over to or not have the opportunity to be developed for residential purposes. So it's clarifying the main function of that, and that is access to or in conjunction with the adjacent drainage reserve.
Thank you so much.
Any further questions on 10.4.1? Councillor Gasson?
Mr Mayor, would I be speaking against the council decision if I talk about doubling the zoning on this motion?
Talk about speaking against, but do you have a question?
Yeah, question. I mean, could we look at doubling the residential zone across the whole of Bunbury and then work towards 100% budget surplus in the future?
I'll take that as a theoretical question, a statement as such, and probably leave it at that, I reckon, Councillor Gassett. Any further questions on 10.4.1? Thank you. 10.4.2. Again, councillors, there is a confidential attachment to this agenda. So there are specific questions of that particular letter. We'll go behind closed doors, but I'll probably do that towards the end. You have questions on that, Councillor Gasson? No, you do? Particularly around the advice, or just in general? Okay, we'll park this item and we'll do. Okay, we can come back to it if there's a thought there. No. Is there any other general questions on 10.4.2? Thank you. 10.4.3, once again, a confidential attachment to this particular agenda item, which the agenda item is there, but obviously most of the references are back to that confidential attachment. So Happy to take general questions, and if there's items around particular options or positions from the confidential briefing note, we'll have to go behind closed doors on those. Councillor Quinn?
Thank you, Mayor. My question is, will there be consideration to provide special provisions to protect and retain the significant trees, e.g. Norfolk pines, and which trees should be prioritised or protected?
Yeah, sure. I think there's some probably potentially different options with the different positions with each of the options. We might take that on notice, Councillor Quinn. I'll pass it to the CEO if he wants to make any comment, but I'd suggest what might be worthwhile is providing a response to each of those potential options next week on what the tree or the ramifications for any trees should any of these options be pursued next week. But I think in just an essence, it will be easy to do that to provide a written response for you. Thank you. Unless you had anything to add on that, see ya. All good. Are there any further questions on this item? Councillor Casson?
I think I can ask it openly. Can we engage an independent, say, accounting firm to review some of these options at arm's length?
CEO?
So, thank you, Mayor. Look, I think the work that's been done by the staff through this whole process, I'm satisfied that we've provided sufficient information to elected members in relation to the potential proposed disposal of this land. If elected members wanted further information, then we could consider that. But at this point, I think there is enough information in the report to support the recommendations that we have made in relation to this item.
Councillor Casson, that could be moved as an amendment if you are alternative option next week, should you wish that that be considered before any further actions taken.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you, Mr.
Oh, sorry, the mic was still, yeah, all good, thank you. Oh. Any further questions on this item? Thank you. We will work our way through that next week, and just so the elected members are aware, and probably for anyone who's interested in the result of that item, I understand if council pursue an option, I can, once made next week, I can read what that option is immediately after that decision, which we'll intend to do. Thank you. 10.5.1 is the early procurement of capital projects. Is there any questions on this item? No questions. Thank you. And 10.5.2 is the Strickland Street pedestrian crossing. Is there questions on this, Councillor Quine?
Thank you, Mayor. Can't debate. My question is, can you please just double confirm that the cars will give way to the pedestrians, and will there be a sign up, as Councillor Ramesh suggested, with the ageing? Is it an ageing sign?
Can I speak, Mayor?
Yeah, I suppose the question was to you, Councillor Ramesh. I'll allow.
Sorry, I was suggesting a signage for elderly people crossing, like how we have across the aged care homes, and a pelican lighting across the crossing. That was last year.
Yeah, CEO, can you provide an update on that?
I might ask the Director of Infrastructure to provide an update and to answer those questions, Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have to have the designs actually approved by Main Road, so we will incorporate those into the designs and hopefully they'll get through. Main
Roads will make the final call on that, Councillor Quine, but it will be recommended, is what I'm hearing on that. Further questions on this? Thank you. I believe that brings us to an end. So just, Councillor, just give the option again. Was there any questions on any of those confidential items? Because I'm happy to close the meeting now and go back to revisit any of those confidential items. If that's the case, I'll declare this meeting closed at 6:05 and thank you for all those in attendance.